nearing the top of one of the first balds, round bald for today. We came through here about, I don't know, 10, 11, 12 years ago, and beautiful views, but a roll of the dice today, and we're not going to get many views. Everything's socked in, but I think you can see the fog and that blowing in front of me. We'll post some pictures of round bald, what you would see on a clear day, and then what we're seeing today, because you're not going to see much, or we're not gonna, none of us are going to see much on this bald today. But that's the way it goes with through hiking. Sometimes you get lucky and get a clear day on the good views, and some days you just get a clear day when you're walking through the woods and seeing nothing, and then fogged in. But it's still kind of cool. But hopefully when we go through Virginia to the Shenandoahs, we'll have some clear days where we'll get the really good views. And we've had the benefit of section hiking from 2010 to 2023, and we got some really good views over those years. So we saw the good views off these balds, but not today. There's not going to be much to see today with all this fog, so I'll tell you about some of the terminology out here. The different kinds of hikers. There's all different kinds of hikers out here. You got day hikers, usually out here for a day. You got some weekenders that come out on the weekend and hike. Then you have section hikers who will just hike a section of the trail, which could be anything from 15 to 100 miles, depending on the section they pick. And then there's something they call a lasher, and that's a long ass section hiker, and they usually hike like 300, 400, 500 miles. And they're called lashers. And then there's through hikers. And there's that who are hiking all the way from Georgia to Maine, or Maine to Georgia. And there's actually a lot of different kinds of through hikers. There's they call them nobos. That's the northbound people like us, going from Georgia to Maine. There's the sobos. That's the southbounders going from Maine to Georgia. You also got what they call the flip-floppers. And they may start anywhere basically, but say they start at about the mental halfway point, which is Harper's Ferry, and they hike up to Maine, and then they get a train or a shuttle or fly back to Harper's Ferry, and then hike south. So they've completed the trail, but they've kind of flipped the way they do it. That's another way to do it. And then there's another kind of through hiker called, I'm trying to think what that one's called, when you go from Georgia to Maine and then turn around and come back.
Boomerang?
I want to say boomerang, but that's not it. That one I'll have to look up. But it's somebody who completes a trail from Georgia to Maine and then turns around and just comes back and hikes another 2,197 miles. Yeah, I think it's called a yo-yo.
Yo-yo, yeah.
I think it's a yo-yo hiker. I think they got to be yo-yo in the head to hike that many miles in a year, but they're out here. And someone told me some knowledge how to spot them and tell which ones are what kind of hikers they are. They said if there's a M&M on the ground and a day hiker will walk past and just look at that M&M and keep going. They said a section hiker will stop, look at the M&M on the ground, pick it up and eat it. And then he said the through hiker, he'll stop, look at the M&M, pick it up, eat it, and then get down on his hands and knees and dig around to see if someone dropped any more. I think that's pretty accurate with how hungry people get out here. I believe Nimrod told me that story back at Around the Bend Hostel. We're at Yellow Mountain Gap. It's a pretty historic site. They got a plaque here, and I'll read you some of what it says. Yellow Mountain Gap, 1780. September 25th, down at yonder at Sycamore Shoals, they gathered 1,000 men from the militias of Virginia, North Carolina, and what is now Tennessee, joined forces to resist the British. This army of independent over-mountain men provided their own horses, rations, and guns. September 27th, they rode up this mountain as the weather turned bitter. Through this gap, they trudged with the snow, shoe-mouth deep. Without benefit as a supply wagon, surgeon, or chaplain, the over-mountain men continued the 170 miles to Kings Mountain, where they defeated the British-led Loyalists in a bloody battle. They won a significant battle of the Revolutionary War.
Okay, here's another plaque. It says, I'll read it because it's hard to see with the glare on the silver. Appalachian Trail, Yellow Mountain Gap. Yellow Mountain Gap is the junction of the Appalachian Trail and historic Bright's Trace route used by the Overmountain men to cross the mountains en route to the Revolutionary War battle at Kings Mountain. The Blue Blazed Side Trail leads 0.2 miles to a barn which has been renovated to shelter Appalachian Trail hikers to keep right at the forks in the trail and turn right onto the gravel road which leads to the shelter. Unfortunately, after I don't know if you know how many years of this shelter being there, which is actually, it's a big red barn, it got dilapidated and they had to tear it down. But Drifter and I did stay there on our section hike several years ago with another fellow hiker, Spooky, and it was pretty cool. It was a beautiful view of the valley, and the shelter was pretty, the barn was pretty cool to see, but it's tore down, and I don't think the ATC has any plans on replacing it with a different shelter.
We're headed up to Hump Mountain. You can see where the trail just kind of keeps going straight up there into the fog. And that's, I believe, Hump Mountain. Got a good view over here to the right. Said we haven't had many views today because of the fog, but this one's not bad. That looks like our last big climb for the day. I believe this one, I think I incorrectly called one back there Hump Mountain. but this is Hump Mountain, and looks like quite a climb. Then we'll go down the other side and a couple miles and there'll be a campsite. I think it's called Dow Flats. I think we'll stay there tonight. Hump Mountain, elevation 5587. We get a good 360 up here. I'll do it real slow. All the way back around. Oh, this was a tough one to climb. But now we got it made because we slide downhill to our campsite. It's just stunning how far you can see and how many layers and layers after mountains. Being from Michigan, which is entirely flat till you get to the Upper Peninsula, this is even more stunning to, I think, people from there. I was hiking with a guy from Georgia and says he's kind of used to seeing all the mountains all around him all the time, but for us flatlanders, this is really unique. Houston Ridge. Houston in memory of Stanley A. Murray, 1923 to 1990. Houston Ridge has been dedicated by the U.S. Forest Service and the Southern Appalachian Highlands Conservancy in the memory of Stanley A. Murray as the chair of the Trail Conference from 1961 to 1975. He was instrumental in bringing the Appalachian Trail to the highlands of Roan. Because of his untiring efforts as a founder and director of the Southern Appalachian Highlands Conservancy, thousands of acres in the Roan Highlands are protected for the benefit of future generations. Well, North Carolina, you came in like a lion. You hit us with a blizzard. about 4 inches of snow, 2.5 foot drifts, and we're getting ready to leave you behind for the last time. The trail through here, one day you're in Tennessee and one day you're in North Carolina. You're walking the border going back and forth. But once you hit this spot, bye-bye North Carolina. That was some stunning views that we just came over on the Balds. I think it's the best views in North Carolina. There's a vlogger we used to watch maybe last year or the year before. And every time she got to one of these where you're leaving the state, she'd repeat the other one. She'd say, Georgia, check. North Carolina, check. North Carolina is check.